Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Om Shrim Hrim Klim Ganeshwaraya Brahmaswarubhaya Jarave Sarvasiddhi Pradeshaya Vikneshaya Namo Namaha Vam Gajananam Mahakayam Viknarajam Vinayakam Vishvesham Vishvashaksham Ganeshayam Namo Namaha Vam Sahanau Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavidyam Garavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vitvishavahai Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Saishvara Sarveshvara Pranamastu. Sai Ram. Welcome to week 3 of what began 2 weeks ago as the journey into the wisdom of the Upanishads. As I said to you in the first week, the word Upanishad itself denotes the crest jewel of knowledge. You know, if you have a big crown, but you have a big jewel at the top, you don't see the crown as much as your focus is on the jewel, isn't it? So that jewel is the Upanishad, right? So through that jewel, you know, you can shine, you can become bright, you can become lustrous. So the first week we looked at introduction, background to the Vedas, where the Vedas is placed, and I spoke to you about the 4 Vedas and where the Upanishads are placed within them. This is the last section, right? You have the Brahmanas, Samhitas, Aranyakas, and then you have the Upanishads, right? And last week I started with Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Brihat means big, Aranyaka means forest. So the vast greatness of the forest that can give you the sanctity of disturbed thoughts into spirituality. Today we go on to Chandogya Upanishad. Now these two are perhaps one of the most oldest Upanishads ever to have been recorded and written. Of course, it does not mean that before they were written, they were non-existent. Remember, everything that we have as a scripture has already been existing from time immemorial, right? Through Shruti and through Smriti, right? Through sight and through sound. Therefore, it is these sights and sounds that the later rishis compartmentalized, i.e. through Vyasa predominantly, and then later have been recorded into, books or records or manuscripts or almanacs, if you like, right? So lots of debates about the date of Chandogya Upanishad, but, research will show you that it sits between the 8th and the 6th century BCE, right? And of course, it's also one of the Mukhya Upanishads, one of the principal or significant Upanishads. And it is related, I told you, every Upanishad is related to one of the Vedas. So Chandogya is related to Sama-veda, right? And it's part of the Chandogya Brahmana. How many chapters? 8 chapters. What is the central focus? Oneness of the Atma. Right? Remember, I said the 4 Vedas have got 4 Mahavakyas, right? So this, and I spoke to you with regards to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. I said, Aham Brahmasmi. That was the central, right? If you can take the entire Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and give it 2 letters or 2 words, that is Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, right? The Chandogya is the same. It talks about the oneness of the Atman, and the central verse is Tat Tvam Asi, right? Tat Tvam Asi. That means that thou art. You are that, right? That thou art. And of course, Shankara has spoken vastly about the Chandogya Upanishad. In fact, in just one of his writings, so Vedanta Sutra Bhashas, right? In this Vedanta Sutra Bhashas, he spoke about this Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, 810 times. So you can imagine how much of significance Shankara has given this particular Upanishad. Okay, so what does that word Chandogya mean? Chandogya Upanishad, of course, Chandogya is the Sanskrit word, But, it is served as one of the core Vedantic philosophies as far as the school of Hinduism is concerned, right? A chanda, has a certain meaning, and that meaning is a poetic meter. Every mantra that is chanted has a chanda, and that chanda is what gives the meter the ups and downs and the balance. That is chanda, right? Certain meter. You're right. It's just like the swaras if you are in Sangeetam, right? The swaras, the 7 swaras. Sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. You don't say them in the same way, isn't it? So chanda, as far as Vedic mantras are concerned, Vedic verses, slokas, stotras are concerned, tells you in what prose or how you should, tailor your prose accordingly. It is, like I said, one of the oldest, and it consists of 8 chapters, like I said. And these 8 chapters talks about, I mean, if you want to see, if you want to think in terms of an overarching theme, then it has to do with the chanting, right? The sound element. It has to do with speech. It has to do with knowledge, which is gained through human salvation in order not to be born as human again. Hence the oneness with the Atman, right? Principally, most importantly, it discusses Om. We say Om before every prayer, isn't it? Every mantra starts with Om and ends with Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So it also talks about this, right? It talks about, many of the Hindu philosophies, right? Of course, because it is Chandogya Upanishad, it is presented in a poetic text with a metered structure, focusing on song or language, that sort of thing. Much of it, is found in a poetic form. So if you're reading the original versions of the Chandogya, you'll find it very difficult because it's not written in a text version, it's written in a poem or a poetic version. So unless you are well-versed, 1 in Sanskrit and 2 in the understanding of how the Chandogya is written in a poetic or poems in those days, then you'd find it difficult. As I said, it goes back to pre-Buddhism. So it sits somewhere between 8th and 6th century BCE, and some of the parts of this Chandogya relates to the philosophy of yoga, yoga vasanas. Each, I said 8 chapters, and each of the chapter has a varying number of khandas. Khandas are verses. So, and each of the khandas can also be called anuvakas. Like, when you read the Sri Rudram, or when you chant the Sri Rudram, there is 11 anuvakas. The same with the, chamakam. So like that, the Upanishads, each of they have various chapters. Each chapters have various khandas. Some of the khandas are referred to as anuvakas. Actually, the Chandogya has 10 chapters, right? Many scholars have written that it has 8 chapters. Actually, it doesn't. It has actually 10 chapters, right? The first 2 are actually very, very base. Base means it doesn't sort of give you any knowledge beyond this life. It gives you knowledge that you need in this life. The last 8 are the ones that take you beyond this life. So the focus and the concentration has been on the last 8 chapters, but actually it's got 10 chapters, right? So the first chapter actually talks about, hymns that are related to marriage, birth of a child, and other rituals. So it's quite brief. And the second one also talks about the different mantras. So sometimes you wonder why, for certain types of deities, you have certain mantras, isn't it? So every deity, for Brahma, you have a different mantra, Vishnu, you have a different mantra, Shiva, you have a different mantra, Durga, you have a different mantra, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Rama, Krishna, Hanuman, or Kala Bhairava, right? All you have so many different types. Now, this chapter 2 talks about, is short, but it tells you which mantra is to be attributed to which divine beings at certain life rituals that you conduct whilst you are alive. So all the scholars are not interested in what happens here. We're interested in what can take you beyond this, right? So the focus is on the last 8 chapters, and they are the ones who are rightly referred to as Chandogya Upanishad. Okay, so let's look at the general, perspective before I take you into specific chapters, each of the chapters, right? So you have an idea. As I said, the Chandogya is part of the Sama-veda, right? It has 8 chapters. The first 5 chapters deal with various forms of contemplative worships, upasanas. There are different types of upasanas. And of course, the last 3 deals with the manner of acquisition of knowledge. So the first 5, in my language, I would call it Karma Kanda. And the last 3 is, in my language, I would call it Jnana Kanda. So, through the first 5, it will take you through the last 3, right? Because your consciousness is not pure. Well, actually, let me correct myself, right? It is extremely pure when you're born. That's why they say, oh, look at this person, what childlike innocence. You hear people say this, right? When you are born, you have a clean sheet. Your consciousness is pure. But as you grow and grow and grow through the 4 stages of life, your 4 ashramas, this consciousness becomes tainted. And finally, when you want to take sannyasa, you want to clean this. A mirror, no matter how good it is, you cannot get a clear vision if it is dirty or smudged, isn't it? So you always clear and make sure what you see is a true reflection. So unless you clear your karmic sheath, you cannot see that very clearly. Hence, purity of consciousness is a central focus of Chandogya. Single-minded concentration. So purity of consciousness, single-minded concentration, you need these 2 in order to get Brahmanyana. Brahmanyana, that means knowledge of the Supreme Brahman. And this you can only get in 3 stages, right? Listen very carefully. Brahmanyana can be acquired through 3 stages. First, dedication in the work that you do, because that will give you the acquired karma. Therefore, good thoughts, good words, good actions, good karma, bad thoughts, bad words, bad actions, bad karma, entirely in your hands, right? So through the good work that you have done or you are doing, your level of worship will also be, similar, isn't it? How much of time and what you do. So work, worship, and then only knowledge in that sense, right? That's why Swami says work is worship, duty is devotion, right? So this is, that's why I said this is referred to as the Karma Kanda and the Jnana Kanda. Every Upanishad will tell you how to live in this life. And it will also tell you in this life how you should live in order to get the knowledge so that you merge with the Brahman, right? But sadly, the focus of everybody is on how to live a good life here and not worry about, what happens to us after, because you don't know. So what you don't know really doesn't harm you, isn't it? Okay. So the first 5 chapters and then the last 3 chapters of 5. The first 5 is Karma Kanda. The last 3 is Jnana Kanda. Right? First one talks about, contemplative practices. So it talks about the chanting, the meditation, the contemplation, and then, the merging. The second talks about how certain things should be chanted, chanting sacred verses, the ritual of chanting. And the second chapter focuses on that. The third talks about contemplation of upasanas known to worshipping the sun, right? Surya upasana. And from this only comes, what we call, what is the, Surya Vandana, right? The 12 steps. You worship Lord Surya with the Yogasana. And because you are doing that to Surya, it also talks about the Gayatri contemplation, right? Which links to the science of devotion. This is chapter 3. The 4th talks about the science of absorption. Absorption is Samvarga Vidya. Samvarga Vidya means the power to absorb, right? The power to absorb. And, sometimes, you hear people say, this person, he's got a photographic memory, because this person has somehow tapped into the science of absorption, right? Samvarga Vidya. And of course, Samvarga Vidya is one of the 16 Vidyas you need to get Brahma Jnana, okay? Brahma Vidya, Brahma Jnana. The fifth one talks about the three Vidyas, the three levels of knowledge, the Panchavyahu, the Panchaprana, five vital as, Prana, Pana, Prana, Vyana, Samana, that one. And then it talks about the Panchagni. And of course, from the Panchagni, it talks about Vaishvanara, the omnipresent, supreme burning self. Hence, the other name for Agni is Vaishvanara. And normally when we start the heavens, our homas, we say Vaishvanaraya Vidmahe Lalilaya Dhimahi Danno Agni Prajodaya. So you're invoking the Supreme Brahman through ritualistic aspect of fire. And of course, fire, as I said, represents light. Light represents wisdom, Munyana, right? The sixth chapter deals with the key to all knowledge and oneness. And this is coming to, see, the first five didn't talk about this, right? The sixth one says how to tap into the immanent reality, right? The immutable reality, That's what Shankara says, Satsangatvam, Nitsangatve, Nitsangatvam, Nirmohatvam, Nirmohatvam, Nischalatatvam, Nischalatatvam, Jivan Mukti. Nischalatatvam, this is what we're talking about, the immanent reality. Once you tap into the immutable reality, you are merged. That's it. You do not feel any presence in the here and the now because you're already merged, right? The seventh one deals with, once you get that knowledge, how you evolve from that knowledge of the outer world to going within inner world. That is why you see all the great rishis, the sadhus, the saints, and even Lord Shiva himself is always in a state of yoga dhyana, always in a state of meditation. So this is what they say. Once you tap in, the seventh chapter tells you this, right? Once you tap in the knowledge, and the knowledge will tell you from outside how to go inside, then that means you have become from an Ativadin, right, to a Jnanavadi. Ativadi means one who is very outward, very much talkative and all of that, to a Jnanavadi who speaks less and less and less and less because he's going in and in and in and in, And it can happen to you, right? Because I really don't feel the need to talk to many people in as much as I used to, a few years back. And they ring me sometimes and say, why you never call us, why you never speak to us? I don't know what to say actually, but the thought process is slowly changing, So because you're turning from outward perspective to inside. And once you go there, you don't want to come back. Right? The eighth chapter deals with that oneness, how you connect your oneness to the Atman, knowledge of the Atman and the self, and then knowing that life as an external human person, as a manusha, is actually false, and the true Atman is the real self. And then that is why you want to attach yourself to the real self. So that is like an overview of the 8 chapters. Now I'm going to take you into each of the chapters so that you have a bit more base on which to build each of the general stuff that I've just told you. So chapter 1, as I said, focuses on Om. Om is spelled A-U-M. Yeah? A stands for Akara. U stands for Ukara. And M stands for Makara. Right? The Chandogya Upanishad, chapter 1, actually begins with the recommendation that all men, right? It says all men. It doesn't say all Hindus, right? It says all men. And that's why I said to you in the first week, the Upanishads can be a Bible for every living person because it makes no direct or indirect reference to any specific religion, right? It only makes reference to man, 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 man throughout. And it's amazing because of all the 108 Upanishads, not one single Upanishad refers to any specific religion. I mean, how consistent is that? How, sharply consistent is that? Right? So this chapter 1 of Chandogya starts by saying, let all men meditate on Om. Om is referred to in the Chandogya and indeed in other Upanishads as Udgita. Udgita means a song or a chant, right? Same thing, same meaning. Om, Udgita. And it asserts the significance of chanting the Om. So when you actually chant Om, right? Right? Om, right? And you should start from your base chakra. And when you finish the Om, the should vibrate at your Sahasrara chakra. So as you take the it should touch every chakra and vibrate the chakra, right? If I ever decide to do chakra meditation with you, I will teach you that art. But let's see. Sometimes it is not the knower who decides what knowledge to give. It is the giver who decides and instructs. So if I get the instruction, if I get, the feeling and, obviously the grace, we can look at that. But when you chant the Om basically is telling you the essence of all beings is earth. This is when you chant Om. Now, in that chanting, I'm going to tell you now how much of information is there. Essence of all beings is earth. Essence of earth is water. Essence of water is plants. Essence of plant is man. Essence of man is speech. And essence of speech is the Rig-veda. And the essence of the Rig-veda is the Sama-veda. And the essence of the Sama-veda is Om. I mean, how fantastic is that? How fantastic is that? It goes back to the origin of creation and brings you back to Sama-veda, why you recite Om. And it's a continuous cycle. Oh. Earth, water, water, plant, man, speech, Rig-veda, Sama-veda, Om. Right? I mean, the science behind these, these records, and of course, if you think, this is a very old Upanishad, so what modern equivalent do we have? Well, many people chant this. I know many Sai centers chant this. I know in the temples, especially in the Vishnu temples, in the Perumal temples, they chant this. It's called Narayana Upanishad, right? So when you get time, go and see the content of Narayana Upanishad. There's one part where, the priest will say, Om Ityakre Vyaharat Namayiti Paschat Narayanayeti Uparishtat Om Ityek Aksharam. Narayana Upanishad. He said first, Narayana Upanishad is saying first you tell Om. Because without Om, that divine aspect to whom you are praying does not exist. Om ityek aksharam namayiti dvayakshare. Namo. Om namo narayanaya namaha. Om nama shivaya. Om dam durgayai namaha. Om shrim mahalakshmi namaha. Om klim saraswatyai namaha. Like that. You see, without the Om, the others are powerless. No power. Right? And I told you why Om is spelled A-U-M, right? Again, in the Narayana Upanishad, if you go, there is one part that says, Pratyaganandam Brahma Purusham Pranavaswarupam Akara Ukara Makara Itihi Thane Kada Samabhavat Thathomithi Yamukta Muchyate Yogi Janma Samsara Bandhanat. Pratyaganandham Brahma Purusham Pranavaswarupam Akara Ukara Makara Itihi. Right? Yamuktva Mukshate Yogi Janma Samsara Bandhanaha. That means it's saying, even yogis only get the final placement when they meditate on Akara, Ukara, Makara. So without meditating on the Om And if you look at all the Puranas and all the, particularly the Rakshasas, the Rakshasas who meditated and got boons from Brahma and Vishnu, what do they? Sometimes they just look at Om Brahma Namaha. That one, they will repeat and repeat for years and years and years. And suddenly, the deity to which that is attributed is appeased, and they come and they grant you the boon, right? So the pranava is very, very important, right? This akara, ukara, makara, iti. So the next time you chant Om, remember the content of that Om and focus from the earth to the water, water to the plant, plant to the man, man to the speech, speech to Rig-veda, Rig-veda to Sama-veda, and bring it back to Om. That should be the journey from the beginning of the and the ending of the Sama-vedam, like that. Valmiki, Maharishi Valmiki, when I spoke about Ramayana, I told you how Valmiki has, written Ramayana, in what state of mind, in what era. But there is one part in another work of his, right? It's called Akarakani Srinidhi. Akarakani Srinidhi. Here he talks about the pranava, Om, in relation to Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana. It's just marvelous, right? It just melts you, if you understand and follow the language, right? It just melts you. Valmiki says, whenever he sees Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana walking, it is like seeing the pranava mantra walking, the akara, ukara, and makara walking. Can you imagine with what beautiful, description he is saying this? Right? Of course, the description also has a philosophical or a spiritual message, right? In fact, one of the, I think it's Ramanuja, when he composed his Ashtashloki, he said, Akarartho Vishnuhu, Akarartho Vishnuhu. He is saying the very syllable Akara, Akarartho, Akara means Vishnu, denotes Vishnu, the all-pervading one, the one that sustains the entire universe. So it is not wrong. Therefore, Rama, being an avatar of Vishnu, right, the seventh avatar, Valmiki is completely accurate, not wrong at all to say, my God, when I see Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana walking, it is as though I can see and picture and visualize the entire pranava walking. So let's connect what he sees to the pranava mantra, right? So he says, Rama is like Lord Vishnu. Akara. Sridevi, Mahalakshmi, is the Ukara, and Lakshmana is the Makara. So what is the connection? Vishnu is the end result. Devi, Akara, the primordial, the beginning, and the endless, right? The beginningless, the endless. So he's there, Vishnu. Who can take us to Vishnu? Lakshmi, because she resides in his heart. So she can take us to him, and we are symbolized by Lakshmana, who's constantly serving with devotion his master Rama and his, master's consort Lakshmi. So Valmiki is saying Rama is the Paramatma, Sita is the goddess that can lead one to the Paramatma, and Lakshmana is the Jivatma. How symbolically supreme is this, reference? Also, Om is important because, Akara is the beginning and Makara is the end, isn't it? But this Ukara can cause problems. And that is why some of the Shankara says Ukara is actually a battle between the Devas and the Asuras. That means in terms of your life as a Jivatma, the Ukara means the battle between the good and the bad, the positive and the negative, the right and the wrong in your life. Therefore, the Makara, if it does not latch itself to all the good, positive, right things, the journey can be disturbed and it will not reach the Akara. Fantastic, And even the great German philosopher, Schopenhauer, he refers to this, and Muller also refers to this, Max Muller. he says this akara, ukara, makara can be seen as a struggle between the deities and the demons, the devas and the asuras, the good and the bad, because the good and the bad exists as inclinations within man, respectively. How fantastic, isn't it? How the Western philosophy sits so idealistically with the Eastern philosophy. It's just fantastic. So that's the first chapter. It just focuses on Om, right? The second one talks about the significance of the chant. Significance of the chant, right? It talks about the reverence that one should have because he or she has got the ability and the knowledge to chant that Om. Now you ask yourself, right? How many times would you have chanted Om? Do you chant it in the right way? First thing, right? And do you chant it in a way that completes the whole thing once? It's different when you sing a song because you want to sing it well, so you make sure, everything is correct. And you want to hear people say, oh, you sing that song very well, But do you do the same thing with Om? Question for you. Right? Because the chanting of the Om invokes three samans. Samans are, characteristics. Abundance of goodness or value, first thing. Secondly, it inculcates a feeling of friendliness or respect. And third thing, it attracts. It's called dhana akarshana. Dhana akarshana. Chanting Om, you may find it difficult to believe. Because in your mind, you've got this fixed thing. If I want wealth, only Lakshmi. But you're wrong. Chandogya says in chapter 2, says, if you chant Om properly, you attract abundance of goodness and value, you attract friendliness, you attract respect, and you attract prosperity. In fact, it says specifically property, goods, and wealth. Please don't believe me. Do it and try it, and then enjoy the consequences. Right? Some people may say, are you doing it? Well, I'm not interested in property, goods, or wealth. I made it very clear. My path is the path of knowledge, right? So, I am really not keen on accumulating wealth. Samprapte sannihite kale nahi rakshati dukrin karani. What he said very clearly. And I made this very clear when I did Bhajagovindam with you, right? When the appointed time of death comes, all these material possessions and acquisitions is not going to move you 1 inch. Knowledge can. So I've chosen that path. And all of us have got our paths to choose in it, So, and when I did Bhagavad Gita, I told you what are the 4 paths, Dhyana Yoga or Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, or Karma Yoga. 4 paths. Choose one and focus on it and grow. Right? Now, I told you what are the things it can attract, but it also has the power to push away, to push away. Attract means it pushes away some things, isn't it? So it attracts the good means it must push the bad. What are the facts? The bad things is lack of ethics. It can push away. Just chanting Om, Chandogya Upanishad says, deficiency or worthlessness or absence of ethics, it can clear. It can push away. Unkindness or disrespectfulness, in human relationships. That means it gives you compassion, and lack of wealth. So it pushes away one Devi and attracts another Devi, Sri Devi and Mu Devi, right? So everything in this universe is connected. You cannot have one without addressing the other, right? So sound is always seen and accepted as Nada, Brahman, Shabda, Brahman. Nada is Brahman, Shabda is Brahman. Nada is sound, Shabda is sound, Shabda, right? So both is accepted as Brahman. Hence, the supreme Brahman is represented symbolically through the chanting of Om. In fact, the Chandogya also says, when you hear things in the universe, when you go to a beach, can you hear the water? Of course you can. You go to waterfalls, you can hear the water, right? On a strong day where there is strong winds, can you hear the wind? Yes. Can you hear the rain? Yes. Can you hear the thunderstorms that precede or in between lightning? Of course you can hear all this. So the Chandogya says all this are chants, chants of the universe, right? You sing, you speak, you shriek, you shout. That is your sound. Universe also speaks. It speaks through the Panchabhutas, a natural phenomena. It's not unnatural, you know. So the second chapter actually focuses on what do you call this? The sound aspect. So it says five things. Hrinkara, right? Prastava. In 5 stages, it vocalizes the sound or it represents the sound in 5 stages. Hrinkara, Prastava, Udgita, Pratihara, and Nidana. Right? 5 things. Hrinkara, Prastava, Udgita, which is the sound of Om itself, and Pratihara and Nidana. So Hrinkara is the starting, the preliminary, the vocalizing. And Prastava is the proposal or the prelude or the introduction, if you like. Then Udgita is the sound of the chant. Then Pratihara is the element that reverberates before the conclusion, which is Nidana. That's why they always say, are you in a state of balance? You know, is your mind in a state of Nidana? Nidana means balance, right? So it goes up and then it comes to a balance, right? So the wind blowing is called Hrinkara, because you can hear the sound. Clouds are called Prastava. When it rains, you can hear the sound is called Udgita. Lightning that strikes and the thunder that rolls is called Pratihara. And the rain stops and the cloud lifts, that is Nidana. See how beautifully nature is talking to us and telling us, do what I do. You know, that's why they say there is always, you know, clear skies after a heavy rain. So life has this, you know, good and bad, you know, night and day, you know, good things, bad things, good luck, bad luck, all of that, right? So chapter 2 talks about the importance of the sound, right? And how, you know, chanting this can give you, you know, dhana, which is wealth, swadhyaya, which is, you know, self-preservation through learning, and, you know, social rituals like yajna, doing all of that. That's why they have several mantras that they chant when they're doing these havans and the yajnas, because it's specifically to propitiate Agni Deva, right? Now, chapter 2 also says, you know, also refers to the 4 ashramas, you know, the brahmacharya, the student, the grahastha, which is the householder, the vanapadishta, which is, you know, retired, and of course, the sannyasa, which is renunciation, right? And I've covered this quite in deep when I did Bhaja Govindam, so I'm not going to go over that. You should remember, you know, what was covered. These 4 stages of life, you know. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha directly represents the stages of the ashramas, you know, brahmacharya, grahastha, sannyasa, vanapadishta and sannyasa. Now, chapter 3 talks about the sun and the worship of the sun. That's why it's called Madhu Vidya, you know, honey, Madhu, Vidya, knowledge. Knowledge, which is as sweet as honey, right? And this has got 11 or 12 volumes, just this chapter, right? Remember, I said each chapter can have a number of anuvakas, right? So this particular one, the sun is praised as the source of all light, all life, and all knowledge. Therefore, meditation on the sun, that is the light and life of all living beings, will give you Madhu, Vidya, knowledge that is as sweet as Amrita. Because once you tap into this knowledge, and of course, who is the keeper of the sun? Gayatri Devi, isn't it? Right? She is the one who keeps the sun and who shines through the sun. That is why you see the Gayatri mantra, which is basically a mantra to illumine your intellect, you know, like from a 20 watt bulb, you know, 1000 watts. Can you imagine the shine, the brilliance, the tejas, right? That's why one of her names is Tejaswini, right? And of course, who has found this Devi that is attached to the sun? It was Vishwamitra, Vishwamitra Rishinam Drishtam Vishwamitra Swarupini. Right? Through his sight. Remember Shruti and Smriti, right? Through his Shruti. Vishwamitra Rishinam, that means the Rishi named Vishwamitra, Vishwamitra Swarupini. Through his sight, he saw Vishwamitra Swarupini, one who controls and pervades in the entire universe, who sits on the sun. Fantastic, So, chapter 3 also refers to Gayatri, the worship of the sun, and it talks about the Swarga. A lot of us think Swarga is heaven, right? As in Naraka is hell. So Swarga and Naraka, right? In some language, it's called Shurga and Naraka, right? Malaysians would know that. It's called Shurga and Naraka. It comes from Sanskrit, right? It's taken from Sanskrit. Now, because Sanskrit is, probably the second oldest language. In fact, there are books and there are research that shows that Tamil predates Sanskrit. Because in Sanskrit, there's, references to Tamil literature. Therefore, but, scholars will argue that Sanskrit was first, Tamil was second. But there is evidence to show that, Tamil was there before Sanskrit. But I'm not talking about which came first or which came second. I'm just saying that, the Shurga and Naraka is taken from Sanskrit and used predominantly in Malaysia, right? Now, the Chandogya talks about Shurga or Swarga, right? Heaven as the human body. And who are the doorkeepers that allow you into the heaven? These are your faculties, your Pancha Indriyas. Pancha Indriyas, that means your eyes, your ears, your speech organs, your mind, and your breath. These are the doorkeepers to the heaven. That is, which is the heaven. So to reach heaven, right, you must understand these doorkeepers and you must work with them. Only when you can work with your eyes, with your ears, with your speech, with your mind, and with your breath, hence pranayama is important, right? Hence, in pranayama, reciting Om is important. See how it all connects. Swarga is heaven. That's the human body. But unless you connect with the doorkeepers, they're not going to let you enjoy this heaven. And who are the doorkeepers? They are your pancha five senses, your eyes, your ears, your speech, your mind, and your breath. And this is what Chandogya says. He says, man is a creature of kratumaya. Kratumaya means will or purpose. Therefore, let him will anything for a specific purpose. See, even there they give you the choice. What do you want to will and what is the purpose for which you are willing this? So the intelligent will will for something for the right purpose. The not so intelligent will will for something anitya, which is impermanent. Intelligent will will for something permanent, nitya, right? So again, the choice is yours. But chapter 3 talks about life as a festival, and it's very important, right? In the modern day, we talk a lot about ethics, isn't it? Social ethics, moral ethics, legal ethics, what do you call professional ethics. So doctors will have their own code of ethics, lawyers will have their own code of ethics, accountants will have their own code of ethics, IT users will have their own code of ethics. Chapter 3 of Chandogya Upanishad says life must have ethics, and ethics is a donation of all living men to life. You think it's a modern concept, modern theory? No, it goes back. Chandogya Upanishad talks about ethics. And how in every person's life, they should donate ethics to life. It's superb, And one of the ethics is ahimsa in thoughts, ahimsa in words, and ahimsa in action. That is ethics. Highest ethical value and virtue of Hinduism, ahimsa. That is why it is one of the 5 human value principles. Swami's organization, right? So the Chandogya says, what are the dakshina? When a priest comes and does a prayer in your house, you offer some dakshina, isn't it? It's a gift or a payment or something. Of course, in those days, now it's all payment, And it's not what you want to give. Normally the priest will specify a certain amount. I mean, those days it was not like that. And they never asked for money. And people usually gave them like vegetables, clothes and, chappals and, umbrellas and those kind of things that they need to live, right? Now it's all completely changed, right? Because of the element of desire. Right? Everybody wants an improved life, a life of comfort. And, and so it goes. So the dakshina that every living person should give to life on the basis of ethics is tapas. Tapas is what? Austerity, meditation, right? Dhana, charity, alms. Right? Arjava is sincerity. Honesty, if you like. Ahimsa, of course, non-violence, and Satyavachanam. Satyavachanam is, of course, only speaking the truth. Even Krishna is referred to in the Chandogya in chapter 3. If you want specifically, and you can have the actual, original almanac, chapter 3, verse 17, line number 6. Krishna often refers to life as a festival. And he always says, Tvam akshitamasi, Tvam achyutamasi, Tvam ha prana samsitamasi. Akshitamasi means indestructible or imperishable. Krishna referring to life as a festival of ethics. Tvam achyutamasi, imperturbable, unchangeable, never change, one that never changes. That is the truth. He's referring to the truth. Life here equals the truth. And of course, prana samsitamasi means the crest of life principles, the fountainhead, if you like. Krishna, referring to that. So the fourth chapter actually is very interesting because the fourth chapter starts with a story. And the story refers to a king and, what we refer to as a low caste person, like when Shankara met Lord Shiva, who came in the form of a Chandala. So this story is about King Janasruti and a man called Raikya. Raikya. Now the moral comes as Samvarga Vidya, right? That which devours, that which gathers, that which absorbs, and that which sucks. So if you know the principle of this story, you will have the capacity to, absorb, like a swan that absorbs only the good thing from the water that it puts its head in there, under, right? So like you become like Vayu, Vayu, when the wind blows, it does not see what is in front of it. It whacks everything, right? So in the same way, if you can master Samvarga Vidya, there is nothing that is going to stand in the way between you and, achieving that oneness, the Tattvam Asi, that thou art, that I am that, So the story is where this king wanted to know what is Brahma Vidya, right? Now he was a good king. He was very pious. He was extremely charitable. Feeder of destitutes, who built many rest houses to serve people in the kingdom, but one who lacked the knowledge of Brahmatman, right? He was doing all of that. Whereas this poor low caste man called Raikya, he was poor, miserable, and of course, but he had Brahmajnana, Brahmatman. He knew the knowledge of Brahmatman, right? So the king called him and said, how is it that I'm doing all this and being born as a king, as a Maharaja? I do not have access or have not access to Brahmajnana when you, a low caste person with nothing, you do no charity, nothing, yet, you are said to possess this, supreme knowledge. And then he says, it is not what you are. It is not how much power you have. It is not how much wealth you have. It is not how much, you do. It is who you are within and how much you realize who you truly are. It is how much you seek that knowledge and how eager are you to learn from anyone who can give you some element of knowledge. right? You never wanted to learn anything from anybody else except your own court advisors and, everybody, because you were vibrating in that level. Therefore, you never went beyond your level. Whereas me, I accessed every form of learning, and therefore that knowledge came to me much more easily, right? That means, the purpose of this story between Janashruti and Raikya is, don't look at where you are in life. Look at what you are doing with yourself in this life in order to get that knowledge, right? That is why I said to you how much of information you need, right, in order to get that knowledge to engender a little bit of transformation. How much do you need? So you have to decide. Do you want to be King Janashruti, or do you want to be Raikya? See, another story in chapter 4 is also about this lady called Satyakarma and her son Jabala, right? So Satyakarma was the mother, and when he asked, what is our caste? Who is my father? And, he wanted to know about his parentage because he grew up only with his mother. His mother said, in her youth, she went to many places and spent, her time in many parts. And therefore, she does not know who the father of Jabala is. And therefore, he is of uncertain parentage. But the boy was very eager to go to school. And school in those days was the Gurukulas, right? So he went to sage Gautama Rishi's ashram. He went to Gautama Rishi's ashram, and he asked for permission to study there and obviously graduate from that ashrama. Of course, in those days, it is not uncommon for the rishis to ask of the parentage or the ancestral background, right? So when Gautama Rishi asked him, what is your parentage? Tell me about your ancestral, history. And he said, I don't know, because when I asked my mother, she said, my parentage is uncertain because she doesn't know who the father is because of her life at that time, and she was much younger, and then she had me. So the sage declared that the boy's honesty is a mark of, Brahmanic knowledge. That means the true seeker of the knowledge of Brahman only speaks and utters truth. That's why the Rig-veda says, Satyam Vadha, Dharmam Chara, always speak the truth, always act righteously. If you can do this thing throughout your life, you're fine. But always one of these two things we don't do properly, isn't it? Sometimes both, right? So we need to check that, keep that in check. So he allowed the boy to study in his ashrama. And of course, he also knew that the boy had a lot of, he is not who he is born in this particular life. He was already born as a great rishi, right? And he soon later became Jabala Maharishi, right? Because he knew how to connect with the Brahman. So Tattvamasi, he realized that, and he could, take anything and multiply it, right? In fact, once Gautama Rishi said, gave him 100 cows and says, when you come back, I want to see 1,000 cows. And he went and he connected with the nature, when you go beyond physical to metaphysical, right? Then you can, Swami has done that so many times, materializing things and all of that. So metaphysical level, you can do that, right? The 5th chapter talks about characteristics that make the destination become clear. So chapter 5 talks about, it says, one who knows excellence becomes excellent. One who knows stability becomes stable. One who knows success becomes successful. And one who knows the home reaches that, which is the keeper of the home. That is your Atman. So Atman, Brahmatman, Jivatman, right? So through the Atman, you can latch on. So this same concept, excellence, stability, that's found in other Upanishads as well. And, as I said to you in the first week, some of the Upanishads are overlapping, right? So For example, there's a clear difference between, prana, breath, and life because of the interaction. So he says, if you know that without the prana, without the vayu, without the air, you cannot breathe. And if you don't breathe, you're dead. In the same way, if the jiva doesn't realize the Paramatma, then it is virtually like the life is without prana, And because in this life, you have to realize that there is an afterlife. In fact, chapter 5 which also talks about afterlife. It says there are two paths in afterlife. One is Devayana Patha, and the other one is Pitruyana Patha, right? Devayana Patha is the path of the gods, Devas. Pitruyana Patha, path of the fathers. And that is why this period is, this period since the day after Paurnami. Paurnami was last Monday. So from Tuesday, this period, the next 15 days, because in 30 days, half month is, Krishna Paksha from Amavasya to, from Paurnami to Amavasya, it's Krishna Paksha, and then from Amavasya to Paurnami, Shukla Paksha. So the 15 days that began the day after Paurnami last Monday is called Pitru Paksham or Mahalaya Amavasya Paksham. Very, very important. I have spoken about this, and when I spoke about Mahabharata and also Ramayana. Right? Pitru Paksham is where the 15 days you are worshipping your ancestors. And you see how the Chandogya Upanishad makes reference to this, right? It says two things, right? In the afterlife, how you live this life depends on whether you follow the path of your fathers or whether you follow the path of the Devas. Now, let me clarify that for you. The path of the fathers in the afterlife is those who live a life of ritual, sacrifice, social service, charity, and you offer, and you observe all this Pitru Paksham and Amavasya and all this. They enter heaven, but they only stay there temporarily into the proportion of their accumulated karma. They stay there. And then what happens? They come back to earth, taking another birth. So this cycle will continue as long as you are focused on the karma kanda part. Pitru Jnana Pada. Of course, the other way is Devayana Pada, which is, the path of the Devas in the afterlife. These are people who don't live in the same way like the Pitruyanas. The path, they live the life of knowledge, and they enter the Vanapadishta. They live each ashrama according to what they should be doing in that ashrama. Vanapadishta, they enter Vanapadishta, and then they go into sannyasa. These go to heaven and they don't return, just like the people who are Pitruyanas. They stay there, and then of course they have a further chance to evolve further. And that is why there are 3 levels, Bhuloka, Bhuvaloka, Swaloka, right? Chapter, these are the first 5 chapters. Remember I said the first 5 chapters talk about Karma Kanda. The last 3 chapters talk about Jnana Kanda. So chapter 6, 7, 8, right? 6 talks about the Mahavakya, Tattvam Asi. Tattvam Asi is fantastic. That thou art. I am that. What is that? That is the Brahman. What is I? The real self. That is me. Right? So the real self that is me is actually the Brahman, Para-Brahman, Supreme Brahman. Right? So the chapter starts with a conversation between father and son. The father is called Udhalaka, and the son is called, Shweta-ketu. Shweta-ketu, son, the father is Udhalaka. And the father sends the son to school, saying, no one in our family has gone to school. I think you should go to school and learn. So the boy goes, and 12 years later, he comes back. And the father asked him, oh, you've graduated from school. That's very good. But have you learned, how to perceive that which we cannot perceive and how to know that which cannot be known? And Shweta-ketu said, no, I learned everything, but I didn't learn that. And then he asked his father, what is that which cannot be perceived? And how do you perceive that? And what is that which cannot be known? And how do you know that? Then he explains in the remaining Anuvakas what is all that, what is this Mahavakya all about. And the essence of that is, there comes a time when human beings will have to realize that there is no difference between them and that oneness. As long as they practice that difference in being and in living in that way, then they will not, they will just be a river, and they don't understand, they don't realize that the river leads to an ocean at some point. They are thinking, I'm just a small river in this small village, in this small state, in this small country, in this world. But they don't realize that small river in that small village, in that small town, in that small state, in the small country actually goes to the 7 holy rivers. Right? So that is why Swami says, isn't it? All roads lead to the same destination, all rivers lead to the same ocean. Right? Now, there's a fantastic phrase here that comes that says, man's journey to self-knowledge and self-realization is like a man who is taken from his home. His eyes are covered, and then he's pushed into the forest where he cannot see. So his life is full of threatening dangers. There is also delicious fruits, but he cannot see, so he cannot reach out. But, there is danger. He cannot see good. He cannot see bad. He lives in confusion until one day, somebody comes and removes his eyes, and then he finds his way, trotters and finds his way out of the forest, and then goes back to live life as he then was. He receives directions, continues his journey, and then one day he arrives home to a so-called happiness. Now, what does this mean? Man, of course, is man. The home from which he is taken is called the Sathya, the truth. So man is taken from the truth and is pushed into the forest, isn't it? The forest here is representative of the empirical world, the existence, world full of Maya. Taken away from his home is symbolism for man's impulsive nature, desirous living, all that. Eyes covered, that means Maya. And this is how you suffer in the world with good and bad. Removal of the eye is the opening of the knowledge. And then with the knowledge, you attempt to get out of the forest. Getting out of the forest means getting out of the miseries of the world. And you go back to your home. This home is not the home that you were taken from. This home is your permanent home. Tomasi. And then you're happy there. And people who give you directions and all, these are your spiritual teachers, your spiritual gurus, and your acharyas, I mean, how poignant is this? Do you not think it is so very poignant and makes absolute sense? A man is taken from his home, eyes is covered, pushed into the forest where there is good and bad. You can't see. And then you trotter and you suffer and you enjoy the fruits. If you touch a fruit and you eat the fruit you enjoy, then you get stung by, you enjoy both. And then at some point, someone comes and takes the cover off, and then you make inquiries and all that. You get back to life, reach your home and happiness. This is the process of life. How beautifully Chandogya says this. Chapter 7 talks, chapter 7 is the longest chapter in Chandogya Upanishad. Right? Longest chapter is got 27 anuvakas. And each one is a gem. This is a conversation between, Narada Muni, Narada Rishi, and Sanat Kumara. And you hear this, the reference to these two, this conversation is actually made in the Vishnu Sahasranama, where a part comes, you say, Sri Sanat Kumara Uvacha. Yeah? That part is actually referring to this conversation. So as I said, everything is connected, right? If you know these things, when you listen to this, you say, yes, it makes sense. But if you don't know, you think it's just verses or lyrics from, something. So 27 khandas, 27 anuvakas, The first one talks about, the first one sets the scene for the remaining 26. It's the conversation between Narada Rishi and Sanat Kumara Maharshi, where Narada approaches Sanat Kumara and asks him to talk about the real self or the Supreme Brahman. So then he talks about the 26 khandas. He said, first thing you have to know, second khanda talks about speech. One who controls his speech and speaks well will realize Brahman. Third one talks about the mind. One who controls the mind and meditates using the mind reaches Brahman. He is telling Narada Rishi how to reach, right? And it's all. So speech, mind. The third one is will. Fourth chapter is will. One who has willpower will reach Brahman. Then thoughts or consideration. Then dhyana, chapter 6 talks about dhyana. Chapter 7 talks about understanding. Chapter 8 talks about strength. Chapter 9 talks about food. Chapter 10 talks about water. So one who understands and respects these things will ultimately water, food. Chapter 11 talks about fire. Fire here is knowledge, right? 12 talks about akash. 13 talks about memory, right? And each one is a greater exposition of the one before. So akasha is greater than fire. Fire was the 11th kanda. The 12th one talks about akasha. Akasha is regarded as greater than fire. 13 is talking about memory. Memory is greater than akasha. If akasha, the space is so powerful, here in the 13th in the 13th kanda, it's saying your mind, your memory is more vast than the akasha. And one who uses and meditates on the memory reaches Brahman. Memory, hope. Hope is considered greater than memory. Prana is considered greater than hope. Knowledge or truth, the 16th kanda, that is considered greater than prana. 17th talks about truth, will give you understanding. 18th says understanding depends on your reflection. 19 says reflection depends on your faith. 20 says faith depends on single-mindedness. You see how beautifully coming. This is garland, beautiful flowers. These flowers are all the same. 20, faith depends on single-mindedness. 21, single-mindedness depends on concentration. Eka drishti, single-mindedness. 22, concentration depends on bliss. You've heard me talk in my reflections about all these words. I've spoken about some of this bliss, understanding, gratitude, memory, all this. So it's all connected. 23rd, what is bliss? To know the infinite. 24th makes a difference between what is infinite and what is finite. What is infinite and what is finite, right? And 25th talks about the instruction about the infinite. You see, they are very, 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 very accurate. They just tell you what it is and how to get that. And 26th, the last chapter, talks about self-knowledge as a result of how you have used the instruction to tap into the infinite. One who practices these 26 virtues becomes pure-minded and is wiped out. He is wiped out of the world of darkness. How fantastic is that? And hence, having that pure consciousness of the pure mind in chapter 7, chapter 8 talks to you about the nature of the knowledge and the Atman, the self, that Tattvam Asi actually comes to light in chapter 8. Potential knowledge becomes actual knowledge, patent knowledge. Patent knowledge becomes potent. Those who do not discover the self within themselves are unfree and are subject to punarjanmaha. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, that one. Again birth, again death. Whereas those who use the knowledge, the self-knowledge, gain the ultimate freedom from all worlds. Boloka, boloka, soloka. That's it. They pervade in the universe. And that is what chapter 8 teaches you about. So you see, the man has many desires. He wants food, he wants drink, he wants song, he wants dance, he wants music, he wants friends, he wants object, and he wants fulfillment of all these objects because he thinks this is what will make him or her happy. But all these things, right? They're just fleeting. They're anitya. Anitya sukha. That means temporary happiness. And so the actual truth of what will give them permanent happiness becomes subject to the maya that is completely camouflaging this. Hence you say what you say in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, asattoma satgamaya. From the untruth, show me the truth. From darkness, lead me to light. And once I can get the top two, I can get the third one, from death, lead me to immortality. And you're saying they are not connected. 100% they are connected. And they're connected in many kindred ways, right? So man impulsively, and I spoke about this in Bhaja Govindam quite a lot, right? In fact, I told you at the end, when I did, Bhaja Govindam, the last session, I said to you, if two words can actually encapsulate the Bhaja Govindam, one is desire and how to curtail that desire. That is Bhaja Govindam, right? So man impulsively becomes a slave of his own thoughts, of his own desires, and of all his unfulfilled superficial desires, instead of reflecting on his true desire to merge with that one. Whereas the Upanishad is saying, Tat Tvamasi, that you are. So why are you focusing on this, this temporary thing? Know what you have within you. But many a times we don't focus on what we have within us. In fact, we always look for something outside of us, and that's where the problem is. You understand what I'm saying, right? That means, I'll tell you a story about this very rich man. And once he decided, he's had enough of life, and now he wants to go and go to the temples and visit all these places in India. So he decides to go, right? And he goes, and then he starts, of course, he's got a lot of money, he's a rich man. And once he reaches India, someone hears that this very rich person has come and is going around the temples. So this thief decided to join him in order to steal his money. So he went, he made friends. Of course, when people want something from you, there is a camouflage. And you don't see that camouflage until the very end, when the thing that is not supposed to happen has already happened. Then only you realize, oh my God, I never knew this thing about this person well, So he became very close to this fellow, this person who now is in search of spirituality. Well, clever fellow, but still he's searching for spiritual, knowledge. And every night, when the man is sleeping, the rich man is sleeping, this thief is searching his bags, searching his clothes to find out where that money is. But he could never find it. So this was going on for about 2 months, right? In the third month, the thief could not take it anymore. So one morning, after the other fellow has his bath and he comes, he's waiting for this man, and then he says, look, I am actually a thief, right? For the last 2.5, 3 months, I've been following you for the sole purpose of stealing your money. I know you have plenty of money because I see you spend it, right? But every night I have searched your bag, I have searched your clothes, I have searched the room where we stay. I can never find that money. Please tell me, I want to go, but I cannot go without this peace of mind of knowing where you keep the money. And the man says, every night before I sleep, I keep it under your pillow. The moral of the story is we always look outside for what we already have inside. See, for 2.5 months, the guy was sleeping on that money. He didn't realize. He didn't realize that, if he just lifted his pillow, he would have found all that money. No, you go out looking for God when God is within you, resting in the Hridayasthana. So this story should tell you that thou art. I am that Tvamasi. Right? So that actually brings us to the end of Chandogya Upanishad. Next week, I'll talk to you about Taittitriya Upanishad. Taittitriya Upanishad. Anyada sharanam nasti tumeva sharanam mamaha tasmat karunya bhavena raksha sarveshwaraha. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Narayana Arpanamastu.